And of course, there
we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we proudly bring to you the paranormal podcast sensation that is sweeping the nation, hosted by Andrew and John. This is Sasquatchers!
Podcast listeners, it is after 10 p.m. The date 11/22/23. I am recording deep from within the Appalachian Mountains. As always, my guest host John, and tonight we have a really, really cool guest, somebody who in many ways was an inspiration to this show when I first discovered his own podcast last year, and it gave me the courage to go ahead and finally get things rolling on this myself. You may be familiar with the podcast. It is Project Skeptic, and we are here with the creator of that show, Jay. How are you doing this evening?
I am Jay, and I was the second gunman on the grassy knoll.
Oh, wow.
You know what? Podcast over. That's it. It's solved.
It's solved. Solved.
It's done. All right. Have it. Sasquatch later.
That's what we do. The Sasquatch podcast that covers everything but Sasquatch.
Perfect.
Is now going to delve deep into the JFK assassination on the, I believe, 60th anniversary, and I'm terrible at math, but I can tell you it is the anniversary nonetheless.
Shoo.
And Jay, we talked before recording, and you had mentioned that you are a bit of a fanatic for the assassination, and you have an episode of your podcast as well that's dedicated to it. So I think it was fitting for you to be on here. I tried my damnedest to have you share the guest spot with RFK Jr., but they just are not answering my phone calls.
It's funny because he texted me and was like, "Are you going to do this?" And I'm like, "Man, I guess so. Like, I have to now, right?" So yeah, thank you guys for having me on. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't consider myself JFK like savant, I guess, of sorts. Like, I know a bunch about it. The JFK episode was actually one of our most downloaded episodes of all time. It ran like 2 hours. I mean, it was a huge episode. There was four people in our studio at the time. It was a giant episode, and yeah, it was one of the had like the biggest taglines for our show. It had like the longest run time. I mean, it was one of the big episodes. So whenever you were like, "Dude, let's do JFK," I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah. So I had mentioned that you were kind of an inspiration, and that's true. We have a mutual acquaintance somehow or another who put me onto your show. And the reason he did that is because when we're at work, I'm just constantly listening to old Art Bell stuff, and there's nothing that compares to it. And he's like, "You should check out Project Skeptic." So I did. So I don't know. I don't want to, look like some kind of fanboy or anything, but you're in rotation with Art Bell every Sunday when I'm at work. And just listening to that, and the kind of, like I said, it inspired me a little bit to get this going. And then finally, when we did, I've kind of found myself part of that community pretty quickly. So there are a couple of other shows that I have discovered that are in this genre that I think are more than solid and torchbearers for art. But you were my first, and I just wanted to throw that out there, that I put your show up there in my Art Bell rotation. And that's another thing that kind of birthed this show, is I was trying to get an Art Bell documentary going, and I had reached out. I talked to his children. I talked to Whitley Strieber. I had a whole bunch of people who were, kind of involved to really involved. Whitley being one of them that was almost disappointed it didn't come to fruition. But the people that own all of his audio files pretty much squashed it immediately. but I'm digressing a little bit. Uh, uh,
A little.
I'm just talking about kind of the genesis of this. And another thing that made me want to do this was when I was kicking around ideas of what I wanted to do for a show, I was like, we should do a JFK podcast. Every episode would be a different version of the events.
Oh, geez.
So I have a podcast. I have a little bit of a following. I have a calendar that's set for the next almost years with
Nice.
guests coming in. I'm going to treat this as the first of many JFK episodes. This is going to be a sub series, so I'm excited about it. I like to learn about JFK. I had JFK stuff on today. I had JFK stuff on yesterday. I have been harassing RFK for 2 months to be on this show. They
True. That's a fact.
His
No?
people are responsive, but all I hear is that there's not enough. There are too many interview requests and not enough time to do interviews. And I'll accept that answer, but I'm throwing it out there right now. This is not going to be the last JFK episode. And I will be waiting for RFK to join the three of us next time.
Well, that's thank you for the shout out, and I'm glad that I could help you like push through that barrier to get into podcasting. I did the same thing with a couple other shows, like Brent Hand over at Hysteria 51. He was really the driving factor of our show. So it's cool to hear that you were like, yeah, I'm glad, like I was listening to you and I was like, I can do this. I can talk about stuff like that. So that's super awesome because there's so like I was the same place that you were. Like I listened to a lot of podcasts and I listened to a lot of things, and I was like, I want to listen to different things, different people talking about, different subjects and stuff like that. And, just to the point to where I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to dive in and I'm going to dive feet first. And the only difference between me and you is I fly by the seat of my pants and you're scheduled a year out. So, I mean, I guess it is what it is,
That was just by pure accident. I had neck surgery.
Oh, okay.
And so I have since every day since September 25th of this year, I have had nothing else to do with my life except this podcast. The first 6 weeks of the show, our videos, I have this big caller on, and I came home from the hospital and we recorded an episode. I didn't let that even stop us. So that's just the only thing. I sat here and I just kind of had a lot of time. For 2 weeks, I wasn't even allowed to drive. So
yeah.
So I just was able to link up with some people, and we've had one person forget that we were scheduled, but so far everything has been really kosher and just like really smooth as far as guests go.
Yeah, it's tough. I did a Podapalooza I did a Podfest back in April, and I did an episode a day for an entire week. And this was like I said, it was like Blurry Photos, Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time podcast. It was Hysteria 51. It was Twisted 10. I mean, I had all these guests on, and it took me like 2 months to record all these episodes just so I could like pound out an entire week of an episode a day for an entire week. And it was stressful, but like, I mean, if I get one email or one voicemail or anything like that a week, or just somebody like, man, that episode was awesome. One person can like, just, make my whole entire week. Like, I love that episode. So the gratification in doing what you do, sometimes you're like grinding and editing and messing around with sounds or intros or outros or dealing with different things. And you're like, but that little bit of gratification, like I love that joke that you told, or that story that you guys were talking about, is like the most greatest gratification that you can get out of doing what we do.
Yeah, no, that's right. We have a Facebook group similar to yours, and there are maybe 5 people out of the 400 that I hear from almost on a daily basis.
Yep.
And those 4 people are like, I'm doing the show for them as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
They talk to me and tell me how much like it means to them to have a new episode when they're at work. And,
yep.
Those kinds of things definitely are what you look for and keep you going when you're sitting there waiting to hear a response or being told
Yeah.
that you're too new and contact us in 6 months or whatever. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm gonna show you in 6 months. I don't have time for you anymore.
That's how our Discord is. Like, we have a Discord and it's a chat all the time and it's all day long. And it's just like, we might talk about a show, or it might be like another topic that somebody will bring to the Discord. But like, it's one of those things, like somebody will be like, I just listened to your episode and like, like, how do you think of this stuff? Or where did you get the story? And it's like, it's always funny to, not funny, but it's fun to like interact with people that actually listen to the show, because I'm just a small town guy. Like, you know what I mean? I'm a teacher. I'm just a regular dude, so the people that, you hit that 1,000 or 1,500 or 1,800 downloads a week. And you're like, man, 1,800 people listen to what we said for an hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah. And that's actually, everything that I want right now. Like it'd kill for that, but I'm fine, with it doesn't even matter like how many you get. It's still that core base
Yep.
that are interacting all the time. And I know for a fact they're gonna maybe be caught off guard that this is a JFK episode, because we have been, I don't want to say strict, because we're certainly not strict. We cover everything under the paranormal and conspiracy
except for Bigfoot.
Except for Bigfoot.
You guys should really do a Bigfoot episode. I mean,
that's not. It's not really us. It's not really us.
It's not on brand at all for us.
Yeah, it's like somebody saying to me, like, "Dude, you should do a conspiracy episode." I'm like, "Yeah, we should, right?"
Right.
No.
Ironically, Project Skeptic exclusively does Bigfoot episodes.
True crime. It's all true crime. Yeah, we don't do anything other than
But what brings us all together tonight is this is the anniversary of the assassination of JFK, and it's crazy to think, 60, what kind of a difference 60 years makes. Where 60 years ago, people were depressed, crying, struck with awe over the fact that this person was murdered. And
I thought you were gonna say people were depressed and crying. I'm like, you mean 2023? I'm like, that's pretty much the same thing that's going on right now.
This is just my normal day.
Yeah, it's like a Wednesday, dude.
60 years ago, the president had to be murdered for that. We didn't just wake up in those moods because we didn't like what we saw on Twitter.
Yeah,
that is kind of the point that I'm getting at. Is things have changed so much between then and now, to the point where JFK conspiracies are memes essentially, and it's nobody bats an eye at the fact that we're going to talk about aliens tonight on a JFK episode, when 60 years ago, if you had even broached any of that subject, you probably would have got your ass kicked in the street, because of how monumental this was to seemingly everybody that at least wasn't involved in his murder. This is the one thing that I kind of took away from all of the documentaries and such that I've watched over the years. Is this was serious business, and tonight I might even say Charlie Chaplin was involved.
Hey, whatever, man. Like, I've never stuck to a firm conclusion on this. I mean, I'm not going to kill Hamlet in the first act, but we have some different conclusions, and they're always revolving. Like, I look at something different, and I look at next thing comes out, and then I go down that rabbit hole. So it may change. It may be a little bit the same, but we'll look at the facts, man. Just the facts. All the facts. Yeah.
So I'm a teenager years ago. I'm watching Dazed and Confused, the film. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with it. It's a huge movie.
You know what I like about teenagers, man?
Exactly.
I get older and they stay the same. We can't
say that on here.
I really can't say that. Sorry.
All right.
That's kind of.
We gotta believe that.
Can we? I'll talk to you guys next week. I'm sorry.
All right. See you later. Sasquatch you later.
Yeah.
It's Squatchulator. You don't even have our secondary outro tagline correct.
Because that would mean that I would care.
And correct. I also don't care for the one that you suggested.
No. Okay. All right.
So I'm watching Dazed and Confused, and just randomly they're sitting there at this party scene, and one of the characters goes, did you know that Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission?" And my, like, I don't know, 13 or 14-year-old brain just immediately exploded. And one thing that when I was in high school, I well, I mean, to put it as bluntly as possible, I was kind of that, not the weird kid, but I liked professional wrestling and a lot of stuff that others didn't really
Hell yeah.
enjoy.
He was the weird kid.
All right,
that-
I was the weird kid. All right,
Come
it
on.
wasn't my choice to sit alone in the lunchroom,
It
but
was.
something that was
Cream all rises to the top.
outside
Okay,
of wrestling, when I really bit into the conspiracies and paranormal, and man, I feel like I spent a semester trying to prove that Butch DeFeo actually was possessed by demons when he killed his family in the
Ronnie
Amityville.
DeFeo?
Yeah, Ronnie Butch DeFeo. Like,
Oh,
Butch
yeah,
was the
yeah.
nickname. Like,
Yeah.
I stayed after school days on end so that I could have access to our library was at the high school. So I would go and I would, like, pour through all the files for that. Maybe someday we'll do an episode on that. But
Oh God.
after
Please
watching,
don't invite me back for that episode.
are you pro possession or are you pro BS?
I am anti-Warren, so I was just on another podcast like 2 weeks ago, and they did like the whole Ed and Lorraine Warren thing, and I'm so anti Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I was just like, oh, you boy, it's like everything ties into it. So yeah, I am total possession. Like I think possession is a thing, but with the gist of it is, if you believe in demonic possession, you also have to believe in the yin and the yang, right? There has to be a lighter side of everything, right? So you have to. So if you're an atheist and you believe in possession, that you're just dumb. Like, you have to believe in, like, there has to be a light side. There has to be a God or a higher power if there's possession, right? If there's demonic possession, right? So we had the whole conversation about it, and I was like, I'm not anti-possession, but I was like, I'm not it was an Ed and Lorraine Warren, so that kind of ties into all that. So
that is something that has really picked up steam, and it's intrigued me because growing up, I had very minimal exposure to the Warrens. I had, well, again, Art Bell. Art Bell would have her on. So outside of, like, the episodes when she was on, until The Conjuring came out, it was kind of largely outside of my realm. And then obviously with pop culture jumping onto their bandwagon,
yeah,
there's a huge group of people who agree with you on that, and I'm just kind of now discovering it. I find it fascinating.
it's such a rabbit hole. So, like, yeah, I mean, it's so much.
Right. So speaking of rabbit holes, JFK. So I'm watching this movie, and they bring up Gerald Ford is on the Warren Commission report, and from there that kind of blew my mind. So right then and there, I decided, okay, well, how am I going to prove that Gerald Ford killed JFK? And the little bit of knowledge that I had as a middle schooler, I was like, okay, well, he was on the Warren Commission report, and he changed the verbiage of the Warren Commission report as far as there being one single bullet wound going through the neck and not, like, through the back of the head, or however they had it worded. So essentially his changes on the Warren Commission report completely disregard some of the facts that were discussed prior to that. And I learned that he was a precision sniper in the military. So my high school brain, I was like, okay, so this guy he wasn't the one that thought of this. He's the one that pulled the trigger. So I can't place him because this is a high school theory, but this was something that I had really put thought into, just completely based off of Dazed and Confused. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of people, at least in my circles, that were talking about it. And from there, I mean, obviously, after JFK is assassinated, Johnson takes over the presidency, and then Ford is then Johnson's vice president. I believe that's correct.
Yeah,
And
Speaker of the House should take the position of vice president in case of death or whatever. Yeah,
right, so and then Johnson is ousted as president, not with Watergate, and then Ford takes the presidency as a reward for being the trigger man. Was uh, kind of the genesis of my JFK assassination fascination as a high
okay.
schooler.
Yeah.
And, without any deeper or further research, that's as far as I can go on that one. But I'm not really, suggesting that this entire podcast is based on that, but that's the history for me, at least, on getting into the JFK stuff, completely, based off of Adam Goldberg having a line in Dazed Confused about it, sucked me in. And so,
Yeah. So
uh,
let's just dive into the basic narrative, right? So what Wikipedia or any book will tell you, right? So Kennedy assassinated November 22nd, 1963 at 12:30 while riding in a motorcade in Dallas. During campaign visit, Kennedy's motorcade was turning past the Texas School Book Depository in Dealey Plaza with crowds on either side of the street when shots rang out. The driver of the president's Lincoln limousine with its top off raced in nearby Parkland Medical, but after being shot in the neck and the head, Kennedy was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. He was 46 years old, one of our youngest presidents, which I think we need to get back to. Young presidents, I think, are more proactive than 76 and 80-year-old presidents, but that's just me. A generation of Americans would forever remember where they were in when they heard that the president's assassination, as it would be a profound political and cultural impact on the nation. By 2:15, Lee Harvey Oswald, a new employee at the book depository, was arrested for JFK. So less than an hour and 45 minutes later, Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for fatally shooting JFK by patrolman J.D. Tippit. 2 days later, on November 24th, Oswald would be murdered by a local nightclub owner by police informant Jack Ruby at point blank range on live TV. So that is the rundown of the narrative in an hour and 15 minutes and the 30 seconds that it took me to tell you that. So the narrative, right, that we all learned in high school and junior high or whatever, where we learned this was that Lee Harvey Oswald fired Carcano rifle from the book depository while JFK was traveling in his motorcade 20 miles an hour. Carcano rifles, very known for being wildly inaccurate to even be able to strike a target moving away from you from that distance is a huge trigonometry problem. And that's where my issue starts. So that's the rundown of everything we know about Kennedy being shot, bar Warren Report, Zapruder film, Grassy Knoll, right? So there we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the zip file of information that I just gave you.
That's good. I mean, anybody that's listening that maybe didn't have that information in front of them, that's good to have. So with that information, okay, you said that you dispute immediately because the firearm is notoriously inaccurate.
Yes.
Especially.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, especially with an object moving away from you at speeds over 20, 25 miles an hour, something like that. Wildly inaccurate rifle shooting from a high angle down to an an object. I'm a rifle shooting type of person. I grew up with it. So, anything traveling away from you at a speed, and trying to make an angled shot to connect where you're shooting in front of something, it's a difficult shot. Even for the amount of hunting or shooting that I have done in my lifetime, it is very difficult.
Right.
Let's say he's an expert. You can't just level that out the window, point it at his head, down range, and pull the trigger, right?
Yeah, the
No,
very
because you're
cool-
gonna shoot. You're gonna shoot behind him. Like if you put it on him, because he's moving away from you in the time that the fire, even if the bullet is traveling at 3,500 feet per second, at 20 miles an hour, at 3,500 feet per second, and the angle that he shoots, right, you're going to, if you're aiming at the head, you're going to hit mid body, but you're in a convertible, you're hitting car, there's a lot of factors that play into that shot.
And if I'm not mistaken, the exit wound was for the back of the head. They were holding the back of his head together the whole time, and they found skull fragments outside behind the car. So
Back and to the left.
Right. the I'm almost referencing the Seinfeld episode that had Newman being spit on, and they kept going back and forth because he was in the JFK film. But yeah, so obviously he just simple physics would say that he can't have shot him from behind if the exit wound was the back of his head, right? I mean,
so here's one of the theories is Lee Harvey Oswald, his first shot hit, right? But his first shot hit where, if you look in the Zapruder film, Kennedy leans forward, okay? And as he's leaning forward, he's hit dead center mass in the skull, and that is the back and to the left, right? So if Lee Harvey Oswald's shot hits low, it hits shoulder, center mass somewhere, like he was aiming for the head, didn't take the trig into effect. As Kennedy's driving away, it's X amount miles an hour. He hits low, or something skims off the car or something, and it goes into like center mass. He's leaning forward, and that's when the shot in the Zapruder film, you can see Kennedy goes back towards Jackie, and that's the back and to the left, which would be a shot to, the right side of the head, pushing exit wound to the left side of the back side of your head. So that is one theory, that maybe Lee Harvey Oswald took the first shot, but he, in the framing of everything, he took the first shot, and then the second shot came from in front of the car at X amount of distance, grassy knoll.
Right. So, in your opinion, is Oswald the trigger man, or was he some form of scapegoat? Because there's a whole other different can of worms that you can open for either one of those as far as this is concerned.
So have you ever seen the movie The Shooter, Mark Wahlberg vehicle?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So in that movie, they frame Mark Wahlberg as, the shooter for an assassination on an archbishop, whatever it was. And he's the fall man for it, because the cops seen him, and it's kind of the same. If you're going to go with that narrative where Lee Harvey Oswald was the trigger man, and it was all a conspiracy to take Kennedy out, and who else is better than a fall man with mental issues for Lee Harvey Oswald. So that's if we're going down that path, it's easy to frame him, set the gun up. He's an employee of the book depository. He had access, he had motive, everything. So he could have been, but the Zapruder film really is the driving factor to me that says that yeah, he might have shot, but he wasn't the kill shot.
Okay, so um, do you think that he was involved in the plot by choice, or was he? So it's been kind of put forward that he was a double agent and that he, although was in the military and was being set up to be a spy in Russia. Um, some of the theories that I've seen kind of put forth that he was aware that Russia knew what was going on. He felt like he was kind of dead in the water as far as that went. And the double agent stuff he thought was going to lead to his demise. So some people think that that's why he may have then become part of this plot to assassinate JFK. Are you familiar with that version of the events at all? I actually just learned of it today.
Yeah, I guess if you look at it that way, to where he wasn't he wasn't just a pawn in the game. He was a driving factor in what happened. Or not driving factor, I guess. He was more of a player in the game than he was just a chess piece. So if you want to say that he was on board with it, I mean, could he have been, and that's what makes it murky, right? Because you have less than what, 4 days, 2 days later, you have Jack Ruby kill him, at point blank range on TV. We're Americans. We need justice. Justice is
Right.
served, So he could he have been Russian spy in the zeitgeist of the whole thing? Maybe. There's so we all have free will and free choice, right? So could he have walked away from it, threatening his life? And maybe, but it would, to me, it would take a lot, right, to just go somewhere, set up, wait for a president that is loved by like 76% of America to just wait and take a shot at him out of pure free will. You know what? You guys kind of see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's almost the chain of events is almost set up too perfectly for it to have been just somebody kind of doing it on his own or even going along with just a half-assed plan, so to speak. In fact, there was uh, I saw some talk in the conspiracy realm that there was another individual, and his name escapes me right now, but uh, the idea was that Kennedy would have been assassinated actually in Chicago, and there was another person who had a very similar background to Oswald, who was then put in Chicago to be the trigger man, and then for whatever reason they decided to move this event from Chicago to Texas. So even with that said, this was not something that he had a ton of time to sit there and plan, because the event was actually to take place in Chicago originally anyway. So
Yeah,
it
there was
would
actually there were some files that showed that there were Chicago mob bosses that were recruiting Cuban exiles. And one of the former mob bosses was Michael Franzese, who was recruiting these Cuban exiles that they were going to assassinate JFK when he came to Chicago. And they were basically militiamen that were Fidel Castro puppets in the United States. And that was supposedly going to be what happened, but obviously wasn't.
And that gets murky too, because JFK got along pretty well with Castro, and it wasn't until like the Bay of Pigs. I mean, you say that, but
Yeah.
he was very much against the government and the CIA, uh, getting too involved, and he wanted to end that um, I don't military action towards Cuba, and he was a proponent in ending the Cold War, which obviously was more of a fruitful thing for the United States to continue to keep going. If we're being conspiratorial, there's a lot of things that we don't accomplish if we're not racing against Russia to do them first.
There's a lot of money in war.
Exactly.
Right, the great rolling war machine. Right, there's more money in war than there is in anything else. So yeah, I totally agree with that. The thing with you were saying about the mob and the JFK thing. I always refer back to like the whole Manchurian, because I get a deep conspiracy guy, so I go back to like Manchurian Candidate, right? So there was somebody is like, you say, Crest toothpaste, and next thing you know, they have a rifle in a book depository. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
that's what I go back to. Maybe if it wasn't in Dallas, it was in Chicago, and it was a different shot, maybe, but I think the facts point to it was going to take place no matter what in Dallas, because even if Oswald was the shooter, they were taking care of it in the background, no matter what. If he missed his shot or got cold feet or whatever, the shot was being taken somewhere.
All right. So, and again, that comes into more murky waters. Is it the CIA? Is it the government? Is it the mafia? Are those related in any way, shape, or form? There was nuclear heat between JFK and the CIA, and so
Yeah.
right. So I don't know. I tend to believe that the mafia thing is almost too easy to go with, and again, because you have Ruby was involved with them, and he's obviously the one who then killed Oswald. But to me, that's almost just it's too easy. Like I think in the 60s, were they really that powerful at that point? I always kind of think of the mafia as more of like a 20s 30s kind of thing. Obviously the height of the mafia's power being prohibition, which was significantly earlier than the 60s. I really think that by the 60s, like the one true group that obviously had the access, the knowledge, um, and the fortitude and wherewithal to do this would have been the government.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you look back at a lot of things in time and space, right? When do conspiracies really pop off and in the zeitgeist of our universe? And this is a big one, right? You got Roswell, a couple years prior to, was that 49, 48, something like that. So when you're getting into the basis of conspiracies, which is, just huge mistrust of the government. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those points in time where you're like, how do we trust the government? Because when it happened, and I'll make a really good reference, but it doesn't sit well with people, because of we're in that age group where we went through something in our timeline, right? So in 9/11, right, we get into the point where we were gung-ho about going into Iraq and Afghanistan right after 9/11, right? We wanted answers. We wanted redemption. We wanted everything because of what happened. And it's the same thing with Kennedy, where you look at what happened to Kennedy, and everybody wanted answers and justice right away. And they got that. And that's what everybody wanted, right? Lee Harvey Oswald was dead 2 days after Kennedy was shot. And then it was done. The case was closed. You come back in with a Warren report and everything that went on with the government's involvement, maybe with everything, the CIA's involvement, the botched protection by the Secret Service, things like that. You start looking at those things to say, well, what is becoming the truth and what is becoming a narrative that we are being told?
And that, I don't want to simplify it so much, but that era of the United States was still kind of very pro-government, and would have eaten everything that they were fed off of this table.
Yeah, I mean, you were on the cusp of the hippie revolution and like the the not trusting the government, the Vietnam War, things like that. So,
right. And that is another thing that JFK, by all accounts, was trying to not be involved with. He had signed an order to bring X amount of soldiers out of that conflict right before all this even went down. And so it's almost like a starting point, when this happened. That's when people start to kind of step back and start kind of taking a look and not trusting what they're being spoon-fed by the suits. And so it's almost kind of like a starting point for this conspiratorial kind of thinking, but I don't even really so much consider it that. It was the first time since probably the Revolutionary War where people started to finally have more questions and answers. And, obviously then, like you said, the hippie revolution and everything else that came from the 60s was almost birthed from this. And it created that monster where, all the way in 1995, Oliver Stone's making a movie about it still, 20, 30 years later, people were still demanding answers. And I don't think that that's what everybody expected.
Well, that's the same thing with, if you want to look at like, let's just say MK Ultra. Okay. If you guys aren't privy to MK Ultra, the government was dosing people with acid and LSD to see what the results were, and trying to find some kind of mind control experiment. And everybody thought that was wild, like the government would never do that, and it turned out, we find out Freedom of Information Act like 7 years ago, that they were doing that shit to us. It's not a joke. It's not a conspiracy. You aren't crazy. You can put your tinfoil hat on, because they are doing that stuff. So for, information to come out like that, it's hard to trust the narrative that they have ever told you, because there's so many leaks. And I don't want to sound like some crazy, like I'm not full on Alex Jones in it, but
too late.
But I'm just saying, like there is
They're turning the frogs gay.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water. I'm just like,
that's actually pretty good.
That was fantastic.
Thank you. But there are the narrative that you have been fed for, your whole entire, especially at our age, our mid 30s to like 40-year-old dudes that are like, you've read about this narrative, you got tested on it in high school and you might have got a D+, but that shit was, it was a narrative that was fed to us. Could it be wrong? There is a chance that it could be. And to not look into it would be ignorant, right? So with cases like this, and the big cases too, like I said, MK Ultra and Kennedy, and whatever things that we're gonna dive into, looking outside the narrative doesn't make you crazy and a conspiracy theorist. It just makes you opinionate what goes on in real life.
Exactly.
Sorry for the rant. I'm sorry for the conspiracy rant.
Why would you not want to investigate this stuff? Why would you want to go your entire life and just like, no, it's all good. It's all good. I'm just gonna, stay in my lane and have nothing to do with this while the government and any other organization, corporations are just doing their thing. Like, why would you not want to at least look, pull the
think
blinds
about it.
apart?
If the government is pulling that trigger on the president of the United States, then what the hell are they going to do to you?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
You know how much money the federal government brings in a year in money wise, right? This is like $41 trillion in tax money a year, and it gets spent between the CIA, FBI, the military complex. There's no really getting bad on it. I'm really like going off on a really conspiracy angle on this, but it's like what can't they do? You know what I mean? So yeah,
exactly.
it's can you guys can I hit my
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. This crap.
that is straight off my soundboard.
That's way better than our soundboard. We have
I hope it ends up in the audio.
We have feeding the ducks. Oh, that's not even feeding the ducks. That's just background music.
I like it.
But I am telling you right now, that motherfucker back there is not real.
Not real.
I don't think that MFR was real, honestly. I think that's a whole conspiracy in and of itself.
Have you listened to my show within the last 3 weeks? I have just been going on a tangent about this lady, but we're here to talk about JFK, so I won't go down that rabbit hole as much as I want to, but we're good. Proceed.
Something that I learned today that I thought was interesting was that there was an Oswald lookalike, so to speak, that was like tracing around the area and was even seen after he was arrested. So there were reports of Oswald literally after he was in custody that then went into the investigation and found its way into the report. And that to me, again, that sounds nuts, but you have, I'm not going to say clones because that's a different rabbit hole. But at least we have you have a lookalike that's walking around that again is kind of setting this person up. Maybe it wasn't Ford, but I'm not even sold that it was Oswald at all. And obviously you have Grassy Knoll. Some other theories that I found today that I thought were pretty interesting was, so you have Umbrella Man. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Umbrella Man, who's has the
black
umbrella.
the Black Dog Man.
Black Dog Man. And
It wasn't was it a man? I thought it was a lady with the umbrella lady. That was the one with the camera.
I don't know if he had a camera or not, but what I read, they interviewed him in the 70s, and he said that the umbrella was there as a protest because of something he read about them thinking that umbrellas were for like pansies or something. So he was, even that to me sounds like a fake.
Yes.
What? Everybody like writes this off because they interviewed him and he explained it like, oh well, this guy was trolling, to use 2023 vernacular. But I don't buy that. Again, times were simpler, so somebody had an explanation and people bought it. But I became more intrigued by the fact that this person said that he was using an umbrella out of protest than, to me, that could just be an obvious. Okay, so I trained to be a professional wrestler a couple of years ago. It's just brought up from time to time. And the reason I bring that up,
all the time,
every episode, he's like, "Did you remember the time I was a wrestler?"
Yes, I was there. I remember it.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. In professional wrestling, we have something that's called an Iggy. Okay, and you wait for the Iggy before you do any of the moveset that you guys are co-opting and agreeing to. So I see an umbrella as a reasonable Iggy for a shot to be fired. And that explanation is, to me, like, trolling's not an explanation for it, when especially that it made such a significant impact that 60 years ago people are still saying that it was weird and awkward, and why would this person have an umbrella. So there's not a whole lot of information about the guy, and people kind of.
No, the man was Louis Stephen Witt, and the reason that he brought the umbrella was it was a protest for policies of Joseph Kennedy when he was the ambassador of Court of St. James, when Neville Chamberlain was the prime minister in the United Kingdom, and the umbrella was this symbol of the appeasement of Hitler and Nazis, when Neville Chamberlain was like, oh, we're not going to involve ourselves yet, in Nazi Germany and that. So everybody knows that, right? Like that's a fact. You're taught that in history. That's everybody knows the black umbrella.
Right.
So just some random guy with this umbrella, right?
Yeah. I don't buy that at all. Like, that's where I start having things, and to see that and just write that off, that's an Iggy. Like, I was trained, I know what an Iggy is. That's an Iggy.
These guys weren't taking 1,000-yard shots. All right. This isn't an American sniper situation. Like, these are easily rangeable shots. To go back against what I said earlier, like, if you were shooting distance, grassy knoll or book depository, realistically, these distances aren't controlled by any type of wind direction or signaling or humidity, Coriolis effect, anything like that. Nothing of these shots were had. So if this guy, right, with an umbrella was like, this is the time to take the shot, that sounds like bullshit. Like it sounds like these shots could be easily made anywhere up and down this road, which turns to the point where Lee Harvey Oswald in the book depository saw Kennedy coming down the road before turning onto where the famous, film was shot or whatever. And we said about this in our episode. Oswald had a better shot of Kennedy coming down the road than he would going away from him, traveling at a certain miles, speed going away. Coming towards you is an easier shot than going away from you. So the guy with an umbrella saying, this is the time, or this is where you need to take the shot, I'm standing here. Oh man, it's a reach for me.
Okay, well, that's a fair point. I guess I'll keep professional wrestling out of this discussion.
No, more wrestling. Oh, more wrestling. Yes. Whatever. Buttons, push buttons, make sound effects. No.
By God.
I'm just saying, like,
there it is.
Just it's just it seems like anybody that had any professional experience shooting, which if you were in on a conspiracy where you're going to assassinate the president, you would find somebody with professional shooting experience that isn't going to miss. You don't need a guy on the side of the road who's like, this is where you need to take the shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Gerald Ford absolutely wouldn't have needed the umbrella ban.
Okay.
But something that I found interesting, just to kind of get into the more absurd kind of facts that are into this, there is an actual literal book that was written about the guilt of Oswald, based on the fact that when he was found, he was drinking a Coke instead of his favorite soda, which was a what is it, Dr. Pepper, I want to say.
It's my favorite one too. It's me. It was me, guys.
I had about me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
And that's it's absurd that there's so much interest all these years later in this, that a book about Oswald drinking a Coke exists. Like an entire theory of this man's guilt exists because he was found drinking a Coke.
You know, there's a book. It's called The Titan. I don't know if you've ever written. Yeah, you ever written it? No, I don't know if you've ever read it or not. But there's a book called The Titan. It's about a ship that's leaving England and heading to the New World, and it sinks in the Atlantic Ocean. And it was written about 40, 50 years before the Titanic sinks. So the stretch there would be everybody that was trying to make a buck about what happened made that buck, no matter if it was writing about him drinking or him being caught or what pair of jeans he was wearing. It was all at that point was, I don't know when this book was written about his drinking the Coke, but grifters are going to grift, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
what
on
we're
that,
doing.
yeah. On that note, there's a book that was recently released where an agent who's now in his 80s said that he picked a bullet up. He was there. He was there when he was shot. He helped put him on the gurney, and he picked up a bullet and put it on the gurney that then traveled with him to the hospital. And so that, I mean, I don't know if I want to say completely eliminates the idea of the magic bullet, but it certainly would then show that there were more shots fired. There was a bullet. It was found. The casing, when he said he pulled it like off of the shoulder, put it on the gurney so that they would find it.
There's
then,
no way.
Right.
There's no way.
That sounds
Yeah,
like total BS. But
yeah.
in 2014, a woman who was a nurse there made the same claim that she found a bullet on the gurney. And the only reason I know that is because it was brought up after this guy's book came out. And it sounds griftier than just about anything that I've heard on the subject.
It took her 50 years to grift.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
she's like,
it took him even.
How can I make money off of this? Oh, I gotta make money. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
So that was something that I found interesting, and everybody who's heard it, like obviously their BS meter starts going off. But one thing that did interest me was, there was somebody who almost corroborated this
Right.
story years ago.
Yeah.
But again, why would you wait this long? Why do you wait until you're in your 80s if let's pretend this is true. You're sitting on one of the most important facts in American history, and you wait until you're in your 80s about to die and you put it in a book. So
NDA.
Right.
Okay, so the bullet, say let's go back to my narrative of Oswald making the first shot in the grassy knoll, shooter making the second shot, okay? Which fills the magic bullet, right, hitting the senator in the front seat. Okay? So that fills that situation. That bullet could go through Kennedy from the back, hit something in the chair, go through the senator in the front seat. Answers the magic bullet question. The shot from the grassy knoll, I don't know if you guys ever hunted, maybe. I've never shot a deer where I've found a bullet in a deer. It's always entrance and an exit, right? When a bullet enters something, it stays whole and intact. And then whether it's a hollow point, soft point, it's got a polymer tip to it, whatever you want to call it. Us barring any type of full metal jacket, which wouldn't be ideal for a contract killing. Bullets shatter and splinter and keep traveling through whatever object that they were hit, right? So they mushroom out. They can continue to pass through. Now, if there was a guy standing on the sidewalk that got hit in the foot by a bullet and they picked it up there, that's a different thing. But I don't think that this bullet's going to go through a skull and just stop and fall on the back of the car as it's driving down the road.
Yeah, that's what I think that's not only where I was at, but I think pretty much everybody unanimously called BS on this guy. I haven't heard anything about it since the initial press on the matter. But But again, that just shows, all these years later, literally in 2023, you have somebody making those claims. One of the goofier ones that I saw was people are putting Woody Harrelson's father on the scene as somebody who was one of the shooters. And I don't have enough information about it. It was just on a list of things. And one thing that was interesting was a few years after the assassination, he was arrested for a contract murder. So he did actually get caught doing assassinations, but outside of that, and also being in Texas at the time, I don't know where people have come up with that. Are you familiar with that one at all?
Yeah, wouldn't that be the biggest like Illuminati like narrative of all time? They're like, Kennedy's, the shooter from the grassy knoll was Woody Harrelson's dad, but white men can't jump. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, what would be like the strangest, like, happenstance of, occurrences that ever happened in the world. But then he ends up being like an actor in like some really good movies. But I have heard that theory before. And like, there is somewhere I may have seen like one of those, it places him there, pictures or something like that. I've gone down that rabbit hole, I guess, of this conspiracy before too. Also,
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, no,
that one's
Charles.
fun.
It was Charles Harrelson was Woody Harrelson's dad, and there was a book called The Man in the Grassy Knoll that claimed that Harrison Sr. was one of the two gunmen that was later arrested. And he was dressed as like a tramp at Dealey Plaza, which was in Dallas. And Dallas police eventually named like 3 other men as the tramps that were dressed up. And I think Harrelson Sr. was convicted in 1968 of murdering another businessman in South Texas. So like he was operating in, at least in the Texas area. So there's, not saying that it's accurate, but there was at least that tiny shred of plausibility with his operations in Texas there.
I think that's all you need though, right? You just need that little bit of
that just the tiniest bit of plausibility.
Exactly.
And it was Woody Harrelson's dad.
Yeah, perfect.
Which is also kind of like the most Woody Harrelson thing that you could hear, because he's also like a goofy, strange guy. So just his dad being the one that shot JFK, I think is more inviting than Ted Cruz's dad being the one to have assassinated JFK, which is
we know that's a fact. So
100%.
Well, Ted Cruz is a Zodiac killer, so I mean, anything's really possible out there. So
both him and his dad were the Zodiac killer.
What's that?
Both he and his dad are the Zodiac killer.
Oh yeah,
it's a generational.
It's it keeps going.
It's passed down like the Black Panther. But you had one that was about aliens, John, and I wanted to hear that one because
hit me with the aliens, man. I am a alien connoisseur. No, not really. I know a lot about aliens, but I think so. I think there's an Eisenhower tie in there somewhere, right? The dentist appointment and Eisenhower.
I don't know. Maybe.
That's a true fact there that he had a secret meeting with aliens that they had covered as a dentist appointment, and so I don't know if that's JFK related, but that's out there.
It is. It's definitely canon.
It's canon. We got it. So there was a something called Project Luna. All right, which was a secret alien base on the dark side of the moon. Okay, so there's an author named Milton William Cooper, who was a U.S. radio personality, like an author and a guns right advocate, who spread this information about Project Luna when he come upon it. So what he did was he promoted the theory that JFK was assassinated by a gas pressure device that aliens had supplied to the driver of the limo. And the reason that they did that was because JFK was about to expose the Washington alien collusion. So there's actually been a couple books written about this, and it wasn't just the original author that I mentioned, but there's also an author named Holcomb who talks about like the UFO visitation, the government involvement, that Kennedy was requesting all this data about like, are the UFOs and the CIA communicating? What is all this? And there were things about like Nikita Khrushchev in Russia and like these different events that were happening. And in all these reports, they kept using the word wet, which wet in government terms means assassinated, right? Like you're dead. So that's the story. The aliens killed JFK. I mean, I haven't read the books. I'll have to pick the books up and I can get deeper into it. But like, that's the conspiracy theories, because JFK was going to expose the alien collusion with the government, with Washington, with Russia, and so the aliens killed with the gas pressure device.
So JFK was going to out the lizard aliens. I'm assuming?
Nobody said lizard.
Reptilian.
The reptilians, yeah. That's
so. There's a really, really good idea. let me explain why. Because recently, within the last 3 months, right? I don't know, you guys follow this stuff or not? Because I am just a big follower of all of it. So, Special Agent Grush, right? The Grush Report. Have you guys watched any of that? Like the dude that was in front of Congress and said,
"Oh yeah.
I know where UFOs are. I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've seen dead bodies." Right. So this dude has been just spilling beans for like 2-3 months now, maybe more than that. Right. He said this stuff goes way back. Like it goes back to prior to what we know as like what's the kickoff of UFOs and the big high strangeness, right, is Roswell. So he says, the government has known about this stuff. Some of these these sightings, he doesn't come out and say the sightings are real, but he pretty much could. Like he says that like the government has known about this. Does he go back to Kelly Hopkinsville? Does he go back to Betty and Barney Hill? Does he go back to Roswell? Different cases in the UFO. Rendlesham. I'm just gonna try to name them all. Let's keep going. But if they keep going, he's like, does this involve all of this? So if you're gonna say that like the driver theory is a couple theories then, right? The driver shot him. The driver, was on the right hand side of the road instead of left hand side of the road, center of the road. So if it goes back into the alien conspiracy that they had a pressure device that maybe there was no gunshot, maybe there was no. Maybe it was some kind of laser cannon or whatever it was.
It was a gas pressure device.
Okay, but gas pressure, I would think that would be more of like an internal problem and not like a blowing your skull out of the back of your head.
He's not gonna shoot him. He's gonna plant it like as something inside of him.
Okay. But still, how far off from the truth would you have to be with these guys saying now that like the government has known about this for decades, right? Like we just said earlier, the Eisenhower meeting with the making the peace treaty, with Anunnaki about just keep our little our zoo hypothesis, right? We're just a zoo planet that nobody wants to, we keep safe and nobody messes with us. So to say that, maybe not that far off. Just saying. Just putting it out there. Could agree with
Yeah,
it.
and I would go so far as to say that you could then, man, you're getting deep into off the cuff conspiracy here, but
Have you met me?
you have you have
Never.
Marilyn Monroe, who could have then been an agent of these aliens, if not a reptilian alien herself, who was involved with the president and could have implanted the device, because there's a million different weird coincidences about her demise as well. So
I think if aliens would have made, a woman, I think they spot on with the Marilyn Monroe thing. I'm just saying, just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Good job.
I mean, they took the gas. It was the gas pressure device, and they put it right up his dick.
Yeah, all right. However that goes about. I mean,
that's how they do heart surgery now. So the technology's there.
There it is.
Yeah,
that's it.
Perfect. All right. It's only 60 years later.
Aliens killed JFK.
Done. I'm glad to be on, guys. Thanks for having me on. And
book closed.
Yep. Don't have to write any more about it. Don't have to grift anymore. We're good.
Nope.
Yeah, man. Ultimately, I don't think as fun as it is to talk about it, or let yourself you get lost in it. Like, we're never really gonna have those answers. I mean, it's a closely guarded thing, and I don't think it's anything close to what they told us. And if I'm not mistaken, they're still putting information out about it in these redacted statements that keep coming out.
So there's a big push. There was a big push for it because there was a bunch of files supposed to be released in 2021, right after Biden took office. So I think that's summer of 2021 when the world was burning to the ground, and it was just a crazy time to be alive. Those files got sealed again, and you can't Freedom of Information Act those particular files, which they were supposed to be. Yeah, it was like whatever 50 some years or whatever the date was that these.
Right.
So that all got dropped or pushed back in because there was just, I don't know, the world was on fire. So do we see these files in 10 years? Maybe. Some of the stuff came out for the CIA collusion with the whole thing. How much of that do I believe in? I don't know. I mean, sort of like some guy with like aviators like putting a file on my kitchen table and said, "This is what we know." I don't know. I don't know. The interesting thing is the 2021. What is it? 2163 or 21 something like that. They'll actually like release the dress that Jackie O was wearing whenever like in the car. Have you ever seen like the information on that? Like the blood-stained like dress like is still like sealed in some like this belongs in a museum, like the end of like the Raiders of the Lost Ark thing.
No, I'm not familiar with that, but you
not
just had a memory about her still wearing the white gloves that she had on. That
she had the whole ass dress on whenever he was getting sworn into office.
So that was the clothes. So the dress she had on of the day of assassination was what she had on when he was sworn in.
Yeah, when they're swearing, what's his name? Oh man, I can see his face. Who is it?
Johnson?
Yeah.
Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, when they're swearing him into office, that picture, she still has like blood-stained dress on.
The dress, yeah.
Yeah, she had the gloves and everything, yeah. Which that's new information that I just learned from my show prep for this. But that's not even the only time that she was seen wearing them. She got off of a plane and was photographed in them as well, which is very, very strange to me. Like that you would still be wearing those. Like she was helping hold his head together with those gloves on. I don't know. Maybe she was just like an awful a person or like completely detached
She
from
was just in,
reality about it.
yeah.
I think that whole lifestyle that the elite live is nothing that me and you could comprehend, right? So was there, something going on with him and Marilyn Monroe? Probably 100%. Was she scorned? Maybe. Does she not give a shit and just wear these gloves because she knew she was in on it? The world is weird, and she just kept going, and people with a lot of money are strange. Yeah, man, like all of that. So to say that she was like, she wore the gloves for like another 15 hours, fucking maybe, dude. I don't, you know what I mean? Like it's weird. Like people in those positions are strange. Like, have you ever met like people that really like just people that have money in general, like don't have a care in the world, but they're like, they have, they're a millionaire or multimillionaire, or you like met and like actually involved yourself with like people like that. They're weird, dude. People with a lot of money are strange. They do strange shit. And for something like that to be like, yeah, I was like, she was wearing the gloves. Maybe I can't see why not.
Maybe it just wasn't even a factor to her. She didn't even think twice about the fact that like these were gloves that she owned. These were the designer gloves, and they weren't going to be tarnished by the fact that her husband's brain matter was soaked into them. But yeah, who knows what about that? Because that is such a strange thing. I saw that, and that was one thing that I wanted to bring up on here because like that kind of it floored me to learn that. Especially because, I mean, despite everything that is rumored about their relationship or, things that going on outside of their relationship, she seemed to be like really distraught about the last rites that were supposed to be read to him when he was in the hospital. I just learned that from a documentary that's on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, remember he was the first Catholic president. So
yeah, everybody else was Lutheran, right?
Protestant,
yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
And so they weren't allowed to talk about the fact that he was actually dead until his last rites were read to him, and that was by her order. And then they had 3 different priests come in, and then the doctors who were in this documentary were able to describe it, because in order to get out of the room, they would have had to shove past these priests. And so they kind of felt like even though they were intruding on this scenario, it would have been more rude for them to ask these guys to get out of their way so they can get out of there, so that they were kind of stuck in there. And I think that documentary is called From the Doctor's Words or something to that effect.
From a doctor's view.
That so that even harkens to that exact scenario that they found themselves in. If anybody listening is interested in this stuff that we're talking about, that is like a hot off the presses, brand new doc that's on
Paramount Plus, right?
Yeah. So like again, to be that weird and distraught about even the news of his death until after his last rites, then to go on and wear these gloves that you held his brain together with, it's a trajectory that I can't quite even jump into.
I mean, people have done weirder things, right, than just wearing like gloves with some blood and brain. I mean, that's not
crazy.
I mean, people like freak out. Your brain stops working correctly. You have like panic attacks. Like the gloves are the last thing she's probably thinking about, right?
But they're
not.
I don't know. They're not like maroon gloves where you would kind of forget that there's these blood. These were white.
No, but like the last thing she's
Mouse
probably
hands that are covered in blood.
But the last thing she's probably thinking about, though, are her gloves on her hands. Like her husband's brains are splattered all around.
Exactly. So
Texas.
Then why, after the fact, when you're at a another president's, being sworn in, or you're getting off of a plane in a very public setting, would you then have these white gloves on that
I mean,
still
we're
are
talking about
stained?
like 15 hours. Like, this is quick. This is happening fast, right? Like, your husband's dead. Now we have another president being sworn in. You're the distraught wife. Like, you have gloves on. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
think
but
it's that big of a deal.
I don't know. When do you take, even if, from 12:15 to 4 o'clock, okay. At what point do you just like, you light a cigarette, you take a breath. You know what I mean? You smoke a cigarette, you take a breath, you take your blood stained gloves off. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, it's been a day. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that strikes me as odd. I mean, like I said, though, like, who knows?
People have done weirder stuff.
Shock is strange. Like, a shocking situation. Like, I had to, my daughter had been life lighted when she was like 1 year old, and I was grown at the time. I should remember every detail of that, a little bit of time, and it's all a blur to me, so it's just nothing super traumatic other than my daughter had to like be put on a helicopter and flown to Pittsburgh. But it's all a blur. It's, it's a big, like, I had a big shock value to what was going on. So for somebody just to forget that they're wearing gloves, I don't know.
Man, I mean, maybe you had gloves on.
Maybe I did have gloves. It was like January. So yeah, maybe I had gloves on, and that's why, man. I think you cracked the code.
Done. We're done. End recording.
Stop.
So, gun to your head in front of Dealey Plaza. Who do you think pulled the trigger, told the person to pull the trigger, and was ultimately behind it all?
Willem Dafoe.
Okay. Well,
all right.
Done.
Stranger people could have been mentioned.
Where's my little note here?
Andrew Christie.
So, like I said, pretty much at the beginning of our session, right? I think Oswald had a hand into it, whether he was, just somebody that was out to get Kennedy for something and place a narrative. He was either bought, spy, stand-in, look-alike, doppelganger, whatever you want to call him. He missed, and they knew they didn't take any chances to say if he misses or not, right? His first shot hit low. The second shot came from Woody Harrelson's dad, whoever was on the grassy knoll. Took the second shot. I say this every time we talk about this, back into the left. If you are getting shot from behind driving away, your head is not going to go back into the left.
No.
So that inquires that's a shot from the front. Well, could have been the driver. In the Zapruder film, there's some suggestion that the driver shoots him.
So that's the accident. Have you heard the accident theory?
The accident theory, yeah.
Yep. So that's what you're talking about, is that one of the Secret Service agents went to fire back and accidentally.
Oh, no. I'm talking about the driver of the car.
Oh.
The driver of his car shoots him. Yeah. You're talking about the other car.
we're talking about a Secret Service agent in another car firing back at the original shot
Yeah.
that accidentally
Yeah, that's
hit them.
two different things. Two different theories. But that's a great theory too.
Could you imagine being that guy though? If that's what happened.
Whoops.
Like,
Oopsies.
That was definitely just Oswald and a magic bullet. I didn't do that at all.
There's
Rose's gun.
there's
Grassy
too
knoll.
much. There's too much for it to be an accident, right? There's, I don't subscribe to, something that happens by happenstance, that like there's no, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that nothing happens like for a reason or because of somebody. You know what I mean? Like there's no coincidences that this shit just happened. You know what I mean? So I am a full believer in a mix of the entire stew, right? Grassy Knoll, Lee Harvey Oswald,
The dog.
everybody had a hand. Every theory that you can think of, aliens, Mark Wahlberg, Alex Jones, and Willem Dafoe. All of them had a hand in it. That is my conclusion.
That's it, boys.
Yeah, I think that is it. So I think Willem Dafoe better call his agent and call his lawyer.
Come on here.
yeah, because I'm gonna look for him. So, like I said, this is going to be the first of hopefully many JFK discussions. Honestly, come back for them. I'm in. I don't want to say negotiations, but I'm discussing with some authors of some books to come on. There is I'm not
nerds.
Sure yeah. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this woman. Her name is Judith Baker. Judith.
I don't speak
Baker.
I don't speak to women.
And she claims to have been Oswald's girlfriend at the time, and that they were in Mexico trying to cure cancer. And she has books upon books, and she is still alive. And
not to dox her, don't want to dox her, but she lives in Latvia now,
hiding because of death threats. And I'm trying.
Yep.
I reached out. I'm trying to get her on. I talked to her publisher and everything, but their publisher put me in with some other authors that wanna come on. So you're certainly welcome to come back, talk more JFK. Even on a non-JFK episode, we can always do this again. But I'm going to turn this
me some cryptids and some UFOs and some... You know what you guys should talk about, though? You really should talk about the Patterson-Gimlin film.
I
think talk about that.
No, Bigfoot. We don't talk about Bigfoot.
Eventually.
Okay.
We're gonna get to it eventually.
No, that's just not our thing.
Yeah.
I didn't think so, but that's just stuff I like to talk about. I figured you guys might want to.
No, we don't like Bigfoot.
Oh, what about Dogman? Mothman?
Desperately trying to get a Dogman episode.
We've actually been trying to get Mothman on here for a couple months. He's hard to get a hold of.
There's no Wi-Fi up there in the sky where he's flying.
Point Pleasant doesn't have good Wi-Fi.
You got to go down to Point Pleasant. Yeah, you got to rub his big shiny ass in the center of Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Say his name everybody 3 times.
Does.
Yeah, say his name 3 times. Oh yeah, man. I'd be glad to. Yeah, anytime you guys want to talk, I have absolutely nothing to do, especially when it's cold out. Now in central Pennsylvania, it is currently like 30 degrees out. So I don't have a lot to do. So I'm always down for talking about anything but Sasquatch. Not a big fan.
Yeah, we don't do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, we don't do that, so it's okay.
That would be silly that we would do that.
Yeah, I would refrain from that. Everybody talks about that. I don't want to.
In the meantime, I always like to end it with our guests having the opportunity to promote and make all of their stuff public for anybody that might cross over in listenership. So if you want to go ahead and let everybody know where they can find Project Skeptic and anything else you might be working on.
Don't. No. Yeah, anywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, any of that, pretty much anywhere except Pandora for some reason. I don't understand that. We have a website, projectskeptic.com. That's where you can find our links to Twitch and our live streams, our Patreon for extra episodes. What else is there? There's TeePublic. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So projectskeptic.com is the links to absolutely everything. Not a lot of going on in the world of Project Skeptic right now. We will get to the end of the year, and then we'll start into our new year. We'll change our intro. We'll do that kind of stuff, and we'll get into our PodFest 2024, which I'm still like looking for. Multiple hosts for the weeks of what we do in the PodFest thing. But if you guys are looking for a podcast about silliness and really bad jokes, yeah, go check us out. I think there's 180 episodes out there or something floating in the multiverse right now. And yeah, it's a good time for the most part.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, it's something that I listen to, and I put that in my rotation with Art Bell. So
I'm sorry.
Anybody listening, go ahead and check them out. It's a good time, and we will go ahead and hit the outro button and allow everybody to absorb the things that we've talked about.
I'm so sorry.
If you can hold on just 1 second after we are done recording to make sure everything finalizes, and we can even
he's recording his own audio. We're good.
Yeah, I have the whole audio recorded.
He's out. I'll see you later.
Okay, it's not. There we go. Here we go.
If you like the show, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for squatching.
Squatch you later.